Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to the channel. I am here today to pit Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park from 1990 against Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park from 1993 in what is going to be the first ever book versus movie episode on Cinefessions. So I'm going to say right out the front, this is not going to be me dissecting every single difference between the book and the film. I wasn't taking notes while reading these or watching this, and so there's no way I could remember it all. And some of them are so minor that they just don't really matter to me. Instead, I'm going to be looking at some of the major differences that stood out to me while consuming each of these and talk about which version I think did it better. So I have only bullet points this time around. I'm not reading from a script, which is a little different than I normally do. And so hopefully you can bear with me as I stumble my way through this. But I want to be able to talk kind of off the cusp because I just finished both of these recently, so they're very fresh in my mind. I will also say that this is going to be an open discussion of both the book and the movie, which I had the movie here. I don't own a physical copy of the book, so I can only hold up the movie, but this is going to be an open discussion of these, so there's going to be spoilers. Unlike in my reviews where there are no spoilers, in this book versus movie discussion, there is going to be spoilers for potentially both the book and the movie. So just be aware of that. If spoilers matter to you and you've not consumed one or the other and you think you might want to before hearing any spoilers, then definitely do that before you finish this video. So I do want to thank both Chris and I'm going to call him Mamo because I never know how to pronounce his Twitter username, but both of them said that I should do this exactly. Watch the movie, read the book, and kind of talk about the differences. So that's what I'm doing. So thank you both for a wonderful idea. All right, so which did it better, the book or the movie? Let's dive right in. I will often refer to these as Crichton's Jurassic Park when I'm referring to the book, or Spielberg's Jurassic Park when I'm talking about the movie. And I understand Crichton did have some credit given on the screenplay, but that's neither here nor there. Crichton's Jurassic Park is the book, and Spielberg's Jurassic Park is the movie from 1993. So just keep that in mind as we kind of make our way through this. Okay, so the biggest difference I want to talk about first has to be the character of John Hammond. Hammond, of course, is the mastermind behind the entire idea of Jurassic Park. He is played by Richard Attenborough in the film, and he's very iconic, right? He is someone that you probably think of immediately when you think of Jurassic Park. I know I do, at least. And so when I was reading him in the book, I was blown away by how different this character is. In the movie, yes, the man is flawed. He's clearly blinded by his passion to see this kind of world of wonder come to life that is Jurassic Park, and he makes some bad choices. There's no doubt about it, but at least he has that Richard Attenborough charm to him that you can't turn off, really. The man is fun to watch on film, and he, like I said, he just has that charm about him that feels genuine and makes you like the character. In the book, however, Hammond is a complete son of a bitch. He has no remorse for anything he's doing or has done. All he cares about is making a buck. That's really what this whole driving force behind this entire thing is for Hammond in the book, is trying to make money. And the character of the lawyer in the film kind of takes on some of those traits. Gennaro. He definitely is more money hungry, but they play it they don't play it up at all. It's very subtle, I would say. Where in the book, it is 100% Hammond that's driving this idea that the reason we are doing this is to be rich. And the reason we are going to expand is to become richer. The reason he doesn't use this idea to cure cancer or to cure disease is because of all the years it'll spend tied up with like the FDA, I think it is, and how the government will basically take it over and it won't go anywhere for X amount of years. And obviously he's an older guy, he's in his 70s or whatever, and so he wants this to get done quickly because he wants to be able to put any price tag he wants on this. And that's something that the Gennaro talks about in the film. He's, we can charge $10,000 a day, $2,000 a day. We can charge literally whatever we want because people will pay it because they're seeing dinosaurs. And so that is something that Gennaro kind of drives in the movie, where Hammond drives it 100% in the film. The biggest reason I hate Hammond in the book is because of how callous he is to his grandchildren. So in the film, I wouldn't say that Hammond is the greatest grandpa in the world, but it's clear that his two grandkids love him. They care about him. They receive gifts from him. They talk about right when they first meet him and he kind of crashes on the stairs, how he, you know, they love the gifts he sent them. So clearly he has a relationship there. In the book, I don't even know why they show up, because clearly Hammond doesn't want them there. Obviously, the characters around him don't have any interest in watching these kids at all. And they're just kind of there. I think it's because he's watching them because the parents are going out of town or something on a trip. I don't know. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Like I said, I didn't take notes while I was consuming either of these. So, you know, I'm just going off of memory at this point. But the point is, he doesn't want them there at all in the book, where he does in the film. He asks about them in the film. He tries to do things to check on them. If it wasn't for his physical limitation, I feel like he would be able to do more, and he would do more. In the book, he doesn't give a hot damn about the kids. He doesn't ask about them. He doesn't care to try to find them, to figure out where they are. At least in the book, Hammond's character makes a statement that, well, I guess if you're stuck in a Jurassic Park, who better to be with than Dr. Grant? So, you know, he makes that comment at least. In the book, it's as if he doesn't even have grandkids. In the book, he actively voices his disdain for the children late in the book, toward the end of the novel, where he calls them brats and how he wishes they were never there because they're just causing him problems. Because, and again, we're getting into spoilers here. So in the book, which frankly, the whole kind of last the last 25% of the book is just so different than what we see in the film. But in the book, Hammond's character leaves that like home office area where they're staying and walks around. Well, he gets scared because he hears over the loudspeaker, he hears the the T-Rex roar. And so he eventually figures out, oh, that's the kids. The kids have hit a button to play this T-Rex roar over the loudspeakers. That scares him and it hurts him, and it eventually causes the demise of Hammond's character, which frankly was a long time coming. I was very glad to see him go, because he was just a piece of trash in the book with no real positive characteristics whatsoever. In the film, though, obviously, you know, the ending is much different. Hammond he sticks around through the end of the film. You know, I think he's back in the sequels, which I'm not going to talk too much about the sequels because I don't really remember them. I have watched both of them, but it's been a number of years. So I know they take some of the elements of the book and use them in specifically Jurassic Park 3, I believe, and some elements in The Lost World, Jurassic Park 2, but I'm not really going to talk about those because it's been too long since I've seen them. But that said, I know that there are some elements that are used in other films throughout the series. And that's another change. In the movie, Hammond himself actually comes to the dig site where Grant and Ellie are digging and basically charms them into coming to the island, which, of course, you know, he says that he's going to fund their dig for the next 3 years. So obviously they're doing it for the money, but at least he becomes a likable character right from the get-go. Whereas in the book, he calls Grant, and the only reason he calls Grant is because he knows that there is this government agent that's kind of snooping around to all his dig sites to figure out why he's paying all this money to fund these digs, which are all done on kind of the northern hemisphere, all done in cold areas and nothing done in warm areas, which, you know, it plays a part in the way they're able to extract the dinosaur DNA from these mosquitoes. So it all comes together. But in the book, I mean, there's no charming done at all. He basically makes Grant go, and Grant decides, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so that's just another way that they make the character more charming in the movie than in the film. And so I want to kind of award this character to the book or the movie. And so this time out, I would say that though I appreciate what Crichton does with the character in the book, it's much darker. For me, it's very difficult to beat Attenborough in the film. And so the point is going to the film this time out. Speaking of Hammond's kind of humanization in Spielberg's Jurassic Park, I would argue at least that the reason that is done is to make the film feel more family friendly. Obviously, Jurassic Park was a phenomenon when it came out, and because it appealed to audiences of all ages. The book, on the other hand, is very much an adult sci-fi novel. You might even call it hard sci-fi. I don't know that I'm educated enough on the actual definition of hard sci-fi to kind of classify it as that, but that's kind of what I feel, because there is a lot of science mixed in there, which I think is something that you would qualify as hard sci-fi. But yeah, it is very much not aimed at families, and Spielberg wanted to address a larger audience here, and so one of the ways he does that is by making the character of Hammond more personal, more humanized. The other way he does this, in I would say probably a larger way, are the characters of Ellie and Grant. So in the movie, obviously, Ellie and Grant are something of a couple. Now, it could be argued that when Malcolm asks Grant, "Are you two a couple?" that that Grant just lies and says yes. Because the way he says it, it's like, "Oh, yeah, we're a couple." It's like he's just making it up on the spot so that he can protect Ellie from this, what he might be perceiving as a scumbag that is Ian Malcolm. But I can't say for sure. So if you kind of go on their relationship throughout it, they're very flirty. It's very much it feels more like a boyfriend-girlfriend couple than what is presented in the book, which is a mentor and student couple, or relationship rather. So the way they interact with each other on screen, the moments they have, the fact that Ellie talks about having kids and how she wants kids, and Grant's like, "Oh no, I don't want kids, blah blah blah, they stink," and she's like, "Oh, they don't," whatever. That whole charming little bit with them in the beginning where we're being introduced to the characters, to me that is something of a budding relationship, even if they aren't, boyfriend girlfriend right now. They're not steady right now. I feel like it's blooming into that. And that is something that is just not present at all in the novel. As I mentioned, in Crichton's novel, the relationship is very much, Ellie is a former student. She was a former grad student of Grant, and Grant is simply, they're working together to try to, do this excavation, this dig, and there's no romantic relationship between them whatsoever that's even hinted at. In fact, they go so far, so Tim, obviously the little boy, he recognizes Grant right when they meet, and he's a big fan of him. He's read his books, blah, blah, blah. At one point, Tim actually asks him, he's like, "So are you and Ellie a thing?" He doesn't say it like that, but that's the general idea. And Grant goes on this long conversation about how they're not. And in fact, Ellie is engaged to be married, and she's going to be married basically after the dig is done over the next summer or whatever the hell it is, to her fiance that's back home. And so not only are they not a couple, she has very clear feelings for somebody else because she's marrying him. So the whole idea of them being together is definitely something, to me at least, that makes this feel like more of a family-friendly affair. It's more Hollywood than the novel. And I don't necessarily love the relationship. I don't think I don't think the film needs it, because the way that Crichton writes these two in the novel, I thought was pretty damn interesting itself. Another way where you see Spielberg trying to make these characters more interesting, at least probably in Spielberg's mind, if not everybody else's, is that evolution of the character of Dr. Grant. In the novel, Grant talks about how he likes kids in the beginning of the book and has no problems with them. He's happy to answer questions that Tim brings up throughout their first introduction and so on. Whereas in the movie, that Grant not liking kids is so important. It's basically his evolution throughout the film. So at the end of the movie, they're flying away in the helicopter. Grant has the two kids on either side, and he looks out the helicopter and he sees the birds flying, which obviously they talk about throughout the entire film, how dinosaurs are actually, have evolved into what we know today as birds. And so seeing how the dinosaurs that were on the island that they just left have evolved, and reminding us that yes, they were birds and this is their evolution. We now see Dr. Grant with both the kids on him, and Ellie is staring back at him, and he's kind of like smiling. Like, it's very clear that that's the evolution. The dinosaurs have evolved into the birds, and Dr. Grant has evolved into this hero character that Spielberg makes him out to be. And he is now this child lover, which I feel like is going to take Ellie and Grant's relationship to the next step, because just the way they're looking at each other, kind of everything that's said without words being spoken. And I'm not calling that cheesy. I think that was smartly done with the evolution of Grant and the dinosaur with the bird. I think that's really well done by Spielberg, but I don't know if it was necessary for the film to add it in, is what I'm trying to say. Two more things I want to touch on with Grant and Ellie, real quick. One, Ellie has a much bigger presence in the film than she does in the book. In the book, she kind of is taken away, instead of a tricer, what is it? It's like a stegosaurus in the movie, and it's a triceratops in the book, I believe, or vice versa. I can't remember, but either way, it's the same idea. And so she's taken away with that. And then she doesn't really have too much to do until later in the book, where she wants to go out and try to, be a hero, basically, and, help stave off these velociraptors that have entered like the area where they're all staying, which is much different than in the film, where she takes on a much more hands-on approach. She's the one who goes back to try to turn on the power to the island, and most importantly, the gates, which is another difference between the book and the film. In the book, the power goes out, and then kind of I forget what the word is I'm thinking of right now, but like a standby power, a secondary power comes on, and it is everything except the gates. So the gates never come on in the book again, whereas in the film, obviously the gates do turn back on. You have that whole moment with Tim as he's counting down while he's sitting on the electrified fence, counting down 1, 2, and then, he gets thrown back or whatever. That moment doesn't happen at all in the book. And it's just another moment to kind of add some tension to these younger characters, which obviously will make the audience feel for them even more. So there's that with Ellie, which I think is a notable difference. And then with Grant, with the T-Rex, the whole T-Rex scene I thought was pretty interesting, because in the film, Grant is established as this hero character earlier on than he is in the book. Basically, in the film, he gets out and gets Lex out of the vehicle before the vehicle takes off over the edge, where, of course, Tim is in it at that point. But in the book version, they both end up over, and they kind of meet up. I don't know if it's hours later or sometime later, after kind of the whole T-Rex attack has happened. They meet up later. And so that is another way that Spielberg just is trying to make these characters more, somebody that you like more. It's like, it reminds me of Save the Cat, the book on screenwriting. This is essentially Grant saving the cat, but in this case, it's saving the kid, which makes him even more likable. And then obviously their relationships play out in a more romanticized way than they do in the book. But I think the way that they do that in the film is fine as well. But so looking at just Grant and Ellie, which version do I think does it better? This one I have to give the nod to the book. To me, their relationship is more interesting because it's not what we always see in Hollywood, not what we always see in these big budget movies like this. We don't have this love story because it's not necessary, and I appreciate that about Crichton's Jurassic Park. So I'm giving the characters of Grant and Ellie to the book. Man, I'm looking at my notes and I have so many things to talk about. This is going to be so long. So I'm going to try to condense a little more than I was anticipating. But the character of Ian Malcolm, and I'm not going to go through every single character and give a point. Just 3 major characters that I want to talk about. There are some differences, like Nedry, I'll touch on him real quick. Really, the major difference in his death is dying inside the Jeep versus outside of the Jeep. But still, the Dilophosaurus is the thing that kills them. The Dilophosaurus has a much bigger role in the book than it does in the film. And for that, I give the nod to the book because I think that's such a very interesting dinosaur. And I love the way they handle it in the book. It's just made to be a larger character, and it's more interesting. So I would give the nod to the book for that, for those moments at least. Nedry in the film is this kind of over the top. I mean, he's Newman, for God's sake. So of course he's over the top, obnoxious, ridiculous, and just an all out pain in the butt. But that's just who he is, right? And so, I love the actor. I think he does such a great job with it. In the book, he is basically trying to be as invisible as he possibly can. He gets out. He basically is trying to do the exact same thing he's trying to do in the movie. He gets out. Things, the rainstorm's going on, so he loses his way, just like in the film. But in the book, he thinks to himself, well, you know what? I'm going to go back and I'm going to try this again once the rain lets up, or in the morning. I forget exactly, tomorrow, whatever it is. He's going to try it again later. Whereas in the film, he doesn't get a second chance because he's already set the virus or whatever it is that blocks them from accessing anything. And so he can't go back. So the character of Nedry, I think, is very interesting. And I have to give the nod to the film in this instance, just because I think the character stands out a lot more than it does in the book. Okay, so talking about Ian Malcolm, which I got off track there. So wrapping back to Malcolm, something I love about Malcolm, obviously, it's played by Jeff Goldblum, who is just... he's amazing. He's Jeff Goldblum, right? And Spielberg's Jurassic Park sets up these one-liners that Goldblum delivers so well. And when I heard them in the book, I was like, wow, that's almost a throwaway line. So Spielberg, obviously Spielberg didn't write it, but Spielberg's Jurassic Park takes these what are otherwise might be throwaway lines, which they still have meaning and they have an impact in the book, but it's nothing like it does in the film. He takes those lines and makes them iconic in the film. And it was just so cool to me. The whole, his explanation of the chaos theory is done much differently in the film. It's actually, him doing the water drop on the hand. He's actually performing that experiment with Ellie as he's flirting with her. In the book, he's simply talking about it, or actually, I think, one of the other characters is talking about his theory to somebody else, because I think at that point Malcolm is already hurt and laid up. Aside from that line, you have the other iconic line where all you were thinking about is if you could, nobody stopped to ask if they should. I know I butchered it. I know it, but you know what I'm talking about. So I did well enough. Again, in the book, it's in this big monologue, kind of in the middle of a monologue, and it's just almost lost. If you have not seen the film, it probably wouldn't stand out to you. Because of the way that this character is written, I have to give the nod to the film in this instance, because it just makes that character so memorable, and Jeff Goldblum's portrayal of Ian Malcolm is just so, it is fantastic. And so this is another one I have to give the nod to the film. So I'm going to combine these next two items because they feel very similar, and I think it's just because of the mediums. So obviously the audiobook, for example, of Jurassic Park is just shy of 16 hours. The film is like seconds over 2 hours. And so you have a lot more time in the book than you do in the film, and that's just the way it is. So I can't compare that, really. I can't count that necessarily against the film. You have to make cuts, and that's just the way it is. But something that I think they could have added in, and that would not have added a whole ton of time, is just kind of the whole scope of the Jurassic Park and how it is affecting the world around the island. In the book, and this is one of those things I think comes up in one of the later sequels, but in the book, it opens up with a little baby velociraptor on the shore of Costa Rica, and he's like biting a child. And you have all these different incidents that they talk about of velociraptor attacks. They think it's just I forget what type of lizard, because I know nothing of lizards, but it's just some type of lizard they think it is. But in reality, of course, we come to find out that it is a velociraptor. And so that kind of adds a whole new connotation to it, because these dinosaurs have escaped. And one of the major aspects of the book, and the whole reason that there is a time crunch on the kids and Dr. Grant getting back to basically civilization while they're running through the park, is that they need to get to the phones before the boat that was just sent out the night before gets to the shore, because they saw dinosaurs on the boat. And so if this boat hits land, then the shit hits the fan, essentially, because there's going to be dinosaurs in Costa Rica, which obviously it'll spread. And so that's really the whole point of there being a time crunch in the book, which in the film, I guess there really isn't a time crunch. It's just they're going to die if they don't get back. And so they're trying to get back, which there are so many more trials and tribulations that they go through in the book than they do in the film. And that's the next aspect I want to talk about. So not only does it have a larger scope than the film does, the book also brings in not a lot, I think it's just one, but it's a flying dinosaur. There's multiple flying dinosaurs. I forget the name of it and I apologize, but they play they're a major player in the book, much like the Dilophosaurus. At least you get some, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing Dilophosaurus wrong, but I think that's right. But at least you get some of that in the movie. In the film, though, when it comes to the flying dinosaurs, they simply don't exist. I don't even think you see one when they have like that big opening shot over the Jurassic Park and you see all the brontosauruses and so on, all those different animals. I don't even think you see it there. There are just simply no flying dinosaurs on Jurassic Park, which is a real letdown because as I was reading through the book, I was trying to think back to the film, which obviously I've seen more times than I could possibly count, but I was trying to think back because it's been, a year or two since I've seen it. Is there anything with flying dinosaurs in this film? And I couldn't think of anything, but I just kept thinking how cool this would be. And like I said, I'm pretty certain this is one that comes up in either the Lost World film or Jurassic Park 3. I don't remember which. And they do bring that into it, which I'm really excited to get to those now because I want to see this in action. Because of that, the lack of this in the film, for the scope and the flying dinosaurs, I do have to give the nod to the film. All right, so I could go on for probably another 30 minutes talking about kind of the differences between the book and the film and why I enjoyed one versus the other more and so on. But I think that kind of encapsulates the major aspects that I pointed out as being different. And I had an opinion on which one I liked more, I thought was done better. So with that in mind, which version of Jurassic Park do I prefer? Michael Crichton's 1990 book or the Steven Spielberg film adaptation from 1993? For me, I have to go with the film. This is just such an iconic movie. Obviously, it's one I spent a ton of time with as a youth, and I continue to watch it all the time, throughout the years. I have watched it on Blu-ray 3D a few years back when I purchased it on that, and it looked really awesome there. Watching it again on my big screen for the first time I literally had goosebumps when those dinosaurs showed up on the screen. Even though, this film is nearly 30 years old at this point, it still looks incredible. And I didn't get that with the book. The moments of the film feel much bigger and much more important than some of those same moments in the book. And because of that, I have to give the nod to Steven Spielberg and his film adaptation. So at the end of all of these book versus movie episodes, I want to declare a winner, which really means nothing. It's just for fun, but I want to declare a winner and then talk one of 4 options. 1, read the book. 2, watch the film. 3, consume both. Or 4, skip both. So in this instance, I am going to suggest consuming them both because they both bring really cool ideas and different styles to the table that are both worth having completed. I love that I was finally able to read this book because it added so much more to the world that I knew in Jurassic Park for the last almost 30 years now. And I'm just excited that I now know a little bit more about this whole world that Crichton has created. I definitely plan on reading The Lost World, which is the sequel, and then I will watch that movie. And maybe if you guys like this, I will try to do the same thing for The Lost World. Yeah. All right. So that is the first episode of Book versus Movie. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. It was a ton of fun filming it. I know there's a lot of ums and pauses and everything like that, but I wanted to kind of make this one a little bit more off the cuff than normal, just because I wanted to let ideas come to me as I was discussing them and remembering them. So hopefully you guys didn't mind this format. I tend to read a ton of books that eventually have movie adaptations, so kind of the well that I could come back to for this is quite large. So if you did enjoy this, please let me know down in the comments below so I can continue to make these as the year progresses. And if you did enjoy this episode, please consider subscribing to Cinefessions here on YouTube. And if not, thank you anyway for watching. I really appreciate it. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll catch you next time.